Hello Stargazers, Bryan Colter here, Evolutionary Astrologer, for your horoscope report for the upcoming Capricorn new moon that happens on January 12th. I have a couple quick announcements though. In the last video I said my new website's coming out and that I would hopefully be able to unveil it during this video, but it's not quite done yet. We're still trying to work out the kinks. And the website is a pretty complex process, so we're going to have to delay it a little bit longer, but it will be coming out very soon, and I will be announcing it on this channel, so stay tuned for that. And then also in the last video, many of you may have noticed I was unable to do a guided meditation, and a few of you were asking about that, and I won't be able to do one in this video either. And the reasons for that is I'm in the process of moving. I'm actually moving out of the city tomorrow, so a lot going on there, obviously. A lot of responsibilities in moving. But also I'm going through some logistical issues with my YouTube channel. So as soon as that's ironed out, I'll start doing the guided meditations again. Well, let's dive into this Capricorn new moon because it is charged. And the reason for that is we have the sun and the moon right next to each other. That's just the nature of a new moon. At 23 degrees of Capricorn. Right next to them, at 24 degrees of Capricorn, we have Pluto, the god of hell, the lord of the underworld. And all three of these planets are in a hard angle known as a square, a friction-based aspect. So the meaning of these three planets are in friction with the planetoid Aries, which is the planet of discord, of dark forms of competition that stem from this dog-eat-dog world sort of energy. Doesn't mean that's really reality, but that's what it represents, you know. Kind of the planet of revenge, too, on some level. And there's a lot to say about the meaning of those planets, but let's just get a lay of the land here, understand why it's so charged. We also have the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which I've been talking about a lot for the last couple months. They're starting to separate from each other, but the conjunction's still very active. And they are in another square to, again, a friction-based aspect, to Mars. So Saturn, the greater malefic, in a hard angle to Mars, the lesser malefic. And Mars is also right next to Uranus, the god of earthquakes and lightning bolts. Wow, so much going on. We also have Neptune square the nodes, which has been going on for quite some time, will continue to go on for quite some time. So just so many squares, so many squares activated right now. So a lot of friction, needless to say. And let's just say, oh, hoorah for 2020 being over. You know, let's look to 2021, see what we can do differently. Now, 2021 is a pretty juicy year, okay, because we have this ongoing Saturn-Uranus square, which they'll have three exact squares over the course of the year, but really they're going to be squared each other into 2022. So that's the major feature of 2021. There's other peripheral stuff there as well, but that's the headliner. 2020 had a multitude of headliners. It was just so charged. So although 2021 is going to be challenging in certain respects, it's not going to be nearly as challenging, bringing us to our knees as much as 2020. So that should be encouraging, somewhat of a relief. And it's also a relief on New Year's Eve as we, hit the new year, that this year was finally over. You know, my wife and I are here in Lisbon, and she's lived here for many years and seen a lot of New Year's celebrations. And here we were at home, celebrating from our home. Wow, how boring is that? But hey, we're pretty quiet people. Anyhow, fireworks everywhere, all over the city, way more than ever, and everybody's hanging out their windows, banging their pots and pans in celebration, and everybody's cheering. And I got this sense of, and she did say, wow, this was more intense than she's ever seen. And we had this sense of celebration for what's new, and also a simultaneous relief of letting go of the old. That was 2020. I feel like a lot of people over the planet are feeling that. And we saw a lot of fireworks, as I said, which is actually a good segue for January. February too, for some reasons, but January is explosive for many reasons. It feels like a powder keg. It feels like throwing a lit match into a pile of fireworks. And we saw the first indications of that astrologically on January 4th, 5th, and 6th, as Mars entered this square with that aforementioned Saturn-Jupiter at that very critical degree, 29th degree of Aries. Now, for those of you who've been watching my videos, or any astrologer's videos, you probably knew that that Mars was in its own sign of Aries the last 6.5 months, which is, roughly speaking, about 2 or 3 times longer than it normally stays in a sign. And whenever a planet's in its own sign, it's really juicy. So the archetypal field around Mars is, at least negatively, it's connected to conflict, war, abuse, emotionally on the negative side, anger, frustration, volatility, rage. So all those things were emphasized. On the high end of Mars, at least emotionally, is courage, bravery, willpower, assertiveness. So we've been seeing both sides of the spectrum, quite substantially over the last 6.5 months. It's been the time of the warrior. And then it entered that last degree, 29th degree, 4th, 5th, and 6th of January, as it's in a square to that Saturn and Jupiter. And of course, we saw that aggression, especially on January 6th, as many of you are aware, in Washington, D.C. And Mars isn't done with us yet. We have more planets piling into this very sensitive square. Mars, Uranus, square Saturn, Jupiter. You have Mercury's joined the party now during this new moon, just adding to the square. And then a couple days after the new moon, the moon itself will enter the square. And then around January 17th, thereabouts, you have the first of those 3 Saturn-Uranus squares for 2021. And then on the 20th, Inauguration Day, Mars meets up and forms that exact conjunction with Uranus. Right now, they're about 4 or 5 degrees apart. So wow, so much going on. Fireworks, explosions, not literal explosions, but it's an explosive month. Now let's circle back to this new moon. New moons are about new beginnings. And here we are having this period of new beginnings at the beginning of the new year. So this whole idea of New Year's resolution kind of rings true here. So by understanding what area this new moon is happening in your chart can be very helpful to point your nose in the right direction in terms of, where can I start this new beginning in my life? This goal for the new year moving forward. That will help me put my personal growth and evolution into hyperdrive, because that's just the focus of evolutionary astrology. It's like, here's the energy, but why is it here? What's the purpose in this meaningful universe? How can I work with the energy instead of against it? So if you have an understanding of your own birth chart and you understand where the new moon is happening in your chart, it can help you to figure out what that new beginning is for this new year. And I did mention my website a little bit ago. In my new website, I will have available a video where I'll be teaching you the basics of how to find your chart, look at your chart, so you can, and some of the broad interpretations of the houses of your chart, so you can, in future videos that I do, you can you can find out how it applies to you in a more exacting nature. But we take this idea of now new moon in Capricorn. Working with Capricorn from the evolutionary perspective is working hard. It's the planet, or the sign rather, of great work, keeping your eye on the prize, absolute mastery at something. It's like, what's your great work of 2021? You want to know where this new moon is falling in your chart. Now, more broadly speaking, as we contemplate the meaning of this new beginning for the collective, if you will, how it's affecting all of us to a certain degree. Yes, during the new moon on January 12th, but this carries out, over the course of especially the next 2 weeks. But it's symbolically representative of this New Year's resolution, as I said. So the Capricorn energy, we've been experiencing a lot of Capricorn over the last year especially, but even 2019 as well. And we take into account Pluto here. Pluto, the so-called god of hell, as I introduced it before. But hell is just a metaphor for the underworld, for our own inner world, the hells we create within ourselves. Our wounding. It represents a wounding. Okay, so everybody's dealing with the wounding of what? Of the past year. Okay, and those wounds are most centrally around wounding from living through this Capricornian, last year plus. Okay, and the wounds that are most commonly stimulated are the more damaging, let's say, dark side Capricorn emotional states, which are linked to feelings of loneliness, isolation, depression, wounds around feeling controlled, feeling as though the walls are closing in around us, wounds around authority figures. Okay, so wounds are really being called to be released now, to be healed, because that's the ultimate purpose of Pluto. Yes, it represents a wound, but if you really want to work with it proactively towards your evolution, it's really about the process of healing those wounds, letting them go, transmuting pain into love and light so that we can be reborn. Pluto represents, on some level, the death and rebirth sequence. Of course, it's also linked to feelings of rage and anger about those things I mentioned before, resistance to feeling controlled in authority. So that's the core evolutionary intention. Let's start this new year with healing the battle-hardened heart from the past year plus. Here's another dark side of Capricorn. It can kind of shut down emotionally and become braced for one damn thing after another and get to this place of stoic acceptance of the crappy hand we're dealt, And Pluto's saying, no, let's not be in stoic acceptance. Let's rise above. Let's keep our rational mind. That's Capricorn's one of the most rational signs in the zodiac. It's a sign of realism. Let's be realistic here and honor this past year for what it was. Okay, we were dragged through the mud. Let's pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, dust ourselves off, recognize with compassion the pains we've endured, and instead of stuffing that stuff so it can be projected outwardly in a damaging way, we deal with it. We transmute that pain into love and light, and we become wiser. We grow. We evolve. And that's the elder archetype associated with Capricorn, the sign of wisdom. And doing that deep inner work, that deep healing, helps us to prepare to take advantage of the dominant energy of 2021, which is Aquarius. We're leaving dominant 2020 Capricorn, entering into a new light, Aquarius. A lot of earth energy into air energy. Now, the reason for that is because Uranus is in that ongoing square with Saturn. Uranus rules Aquarius. Okay, we have Saturn in Aquarius, we have Jupiter in Aquarius throughout the year. So this is going into Earth, or from Earth into air. Earth tends to be slower. All the Earth signs tend to just plod along. One foot in front of the other. Consistency is a great Earth word. And then we enter into an air family sign, Aquarius, which is on the mental plane. It's a lot faster. Okay, so we're seeing a quickening of energy. 2020 felt slow. It's like you hear that it's common. You hear that the more you age, the faster the years go by. And that's totally true. I've experienced that myself. But even so, no matter how old you were, 2020 felt like it was never ending. There was that slowness there. Okay. Saturn and Capricorn likes to slow things down, Aquarius is saying, okay, the hell with the old of being, feeling like our feet were stuck in the mud. Okay, now let's start sprinting. Okay, so it does represent a movement of energy. So 2021's things are going to start speeding up, of course. Now, the year of Aquarius, the rebel, the revolutionary. And here we find Aquarius's ruler, Uranus, the wild card in astrology. It represents individuation. It's the rule breaker. It's linked to criminal behavior on some level. And I'm not saying we're going to become more criminal, but if you think about what a criminal does, they step outside cultural norm. They're an outsider. They're an exile. Uranus kind of feels like that. It has other meaning too, like especially technological evolution, which we'll probably see a lot of in 2021. So there's many meanings, layers of meaning with all the archetypes. But fundamentally, the combination with Uranus and Aquarius is we're coming from being stuck in the mud, the walls closing in on us, to wanting to just feel free, feel the wind in our hair, take off the shackles, get out of the jail cell, So this is the major friction of 2021, Saturn square Uranus, is basically control versus freedom, rules versus rule breaking, okay? And the tension and friction between those two sides. And people are sick of these walls closing in, and they're going to start getting together. Aquarius is very much about people coming together, networking, okay? And we've seen a lot of that, people coming together saying enough is enough, even in 2020. Okay, although it's not widely advertised, many people don't realize, but in places all over the world, they've had gatherings of millions of people. 2021, this is going to be the dominant theme. Okay, as we have Saturn in Capricorn, which again is about rules, governments, control. Okay, the dark side of ambition, at least on the shadow side. Regulations, structures, habits, all these things. And then Aquarius is saying enough of that. Okay, we're going to break free from the chains of slavery. We've had enough. And as I said, that's the dominant theme of this year. We're really going to see it start to happen in big ways. We already have, in January, this month. Especially as we hit Inauguration Day, as Mars forms that exact square with Uranus on that day. Wow, what are the chances of that? Mars is about assertiveness, anger, moving forward like a warrior. And here it is next to the planet of freedom. We want freedom. It's going to be fireworks. So, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, blue or red, it's at least in America, obviously I'm talking primarily about that, although we'll see it in other countries in different manifestations as well. But there's just going to be a lot of explosiveness, that lit match thrown into the fireworks. And so this is one of the most charged months of this year, okay? But that theme is always present throughout the year. Also what's present through a lot of the year is what I said before. Neptune is in that square to the nodes of the moon. And, I've been talking a lot about the nodes, so many of you might already be aware of my take on that. But just a quick recap. The nodes of the moon are opposite each other. It represents, on the south node of the moon is collective karma, and then the north node of the moon is the karmic medicine. So I always use the example of there being a teeter-totter. The teeter-totter's out of balance towards the Sagittarius end, so we want to put more weight or attention on the Gemini end. Get away from dark side Sag, embrace high end Gemini to find that balance point. Okay, so things have gotten out of kilter. I'll also point out that the north node of the moon is nothing but a good idea. Most people never reach it. Okay, because it's opposite from the dominant energy that we're experiencing right now, which would be dark side Sagittarius. And the collective karma is ripening now, saying we need to take a hard look at Gemini to find that balance point. Meanwhile, Neptune, in that square aspect, confusing things. Confusion is actually a good segue word for Neptune because it represents higher dimensions of reality, collective consciousness, God consciousness. It's a very spiritual, metaphysical planet. Okay, and on the shadow side, it can be very disorienting from this very, working with Neptune sometimes can be very disorienting from this dense dimension of reality existing here on planet Earth, the school of hard knocks. Okay, so this feeling of getting away from dark side Sag, which is basically the world is drunk on religion, toxic belief systems, And what I mean by religion is not necessarily about God, although it can include that. I don't think that's the dominant issue here, although that can be a piece of it. Drunk on belief systems, the one that's very obvious to me now is dealing with Capricorn issues of society, politics. We can be drunk on religion. We can be religious about being a Democrat or a Republican, So these fixed set of ideologies and belief systems, many of us, not all of us, some illustrate this more than others, but by and large, averaged over the collective, we're suffering from Sagittariuses, which is a fixed set of belief systems. And whenever we know what reality is, we're so certain we're always going to have certain blinders. All belief systems have grains of truth, of course. But we don't want to get passionate in a volatile way about these belief systems and start attacking other people's belief systems, further adding on to the tension. We want to get to high-end Gemini, which is new information that shocks us out of our dark side Sagittarius belief systems. Oh, didn't see that one coming. And then we're immersed in this Neptune, which is about confusion, disorientation, disillusionment, delusional about our belief systems, fanatical about our belief systems. And we're trying to wake up from that. We're trying to wake up from the dream of what we believe to be true. We're trying to get out of this fugue state. And Gemini, because of the law of synchronicity, will be getting new influxes of information that will shock us out of those old beliefs. So we're meant to learn, basically. Learn in such a way that how we perceive reality is more in alignment with what reality actually is. Okay. Meanwhile, all the fireworks are going off. And those fireworks are going to get our attention. The reality as I saw it before, it wasn't quite that, And for some people, that's going to be very uncomfortable. For some of those, it'll be a welcome change. But we need to go towards this more Aquarian future, which ultimately is about evolution. Okay, the evolution of humanity. We've had our feet stuck in the mud. Now it's time to break free. It's all about freedom, individuation, autonomy, independence. These are all Aquarian words. And they're at odds, at cross purposes, with the more authoritative controlling mechanisms of the planet who don't want that, hence the square. So I think that things are going to start moving now. It's not going to be nearly as brutal as 2020. I'm very positive about 2021, but it is going to be colorful. It's going to be very dramatic as we try to break free. And really, that's the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal always being to expand our consciousness.